so that it may be 3.5 years from now. Yeah, so we, like you, are at the whim of the state legislature on that one.
Okay.
I've never seen a tax like that go down, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Arsenault.
This could be for Mark or Turner. Can you tell me about the physical depreciation for the first couple of years on the wind farms?
You mean the financial depreciation?
Yes, that would, and obviously if there's a physical depreciation, then that would mean the tax revenue would actually go down, correct?
Right. And in the uniform state law, and actually I think we cited the Public Act number, so you can go and get that. It specifies how it ticks down for the depreciation over the first, in fact, over the whole entire time frame. So it's preset in the law. In other words, we can't arbitrarily set how the asset depreciates. It's already specified in the taxation law.
If I can comment, one of the reasons the state did that was to ensure we had uniformity across the state. You can imagine on a project like this, what would happen if we had 4 counties, each of which assess these differently, forgetting township assessors. 4 counties assess them differently. The state was looking for creating continuity in that. And having done a number of wind farm projects before the state law was passed, I can tell you this creates a lot more consistency, not only for the taxing bodies, but also for the developers, and enables them, quite honestly, it's easier to define, to budget, to develop a project when you can set ahead of time what that standard is going to be.
Is that accelerated depreciation?
No, I think it's straight line, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And as Mark mentioned, in '02, when we were working on the Camp Grove wind farm, there was no state law. And when we asked the county assessor, well, what are you going to do? They didn't have an answer. So it was a black hole at that time. But as you know, that's obviously cleared up, and this legislation is very important, and it does create a level playing field. So just one other point there. We compete with other wind farms in neighboring counties because we're going to be competing for the same power contract. If their tax was lower than our tax, they could outbid us or underbid us. So it provides the uniformity across the state is very important.
Any other questions? Mr. Washington.
To your knowledge, your best knowledge, has wind towers interfered with crop dusters spraying?
The answer is that the answer is no, and I could be happy to show you a 1-minute video. Actually, can I do that if you'd like?
Sure.
Okay.
No more than trees have charge.
Yeah.
Trees are 200.
In our Benton, I mentioned our Benton County wind farm went operational in May of this year, and in fact, one of our landowners, I'm going to jump through to about right here. This is a crop duster flying through our Benton County wind farm, and as you look at this video, what you'll notice is that his business is at about 20 feet above the ground. Our business is maybe several hundred feet above. So while it may look as though that there is, some conflict between what he's doing and what our wind farm is doing, he deals with these kind of issues. He's got power lines, he's got radio towers. So some people would lead you to believe that these guys don't fly through wind farms. Well, it does in fact happen. The pilot will tell you that what he's concerned about is he has to maneuver around the towers. It takes him a little bit extra time to do that. So he's using a little bit more fuel, he's using more time. So he may charge an extra $1 or $2 an acre to do his service. But in terms of the risk level that's actually he's presented with is very small, I think.
Follow-up question. In the future, do you envision wind towers being tied into a national grid for power transfer?
I think that's right. I mean, there's been a whole lot of talk recently about there's a lot of resource out there, but there's very little way to get that power to market. And these transmission lines are very important. Here we sit in an area where we're close to several large metropolitan areas, and we have those power lines, those highways available to get that power to market. So not so important in this area of the country, but as you maybe move west, it then becomes much more important.
What is the miles per hour wind it takes to run a turbine?
The turbine itself will kick on at about 5 miles an hour, so it'll start generating. I was generating, 1/100th of its power at that point. It'll ramp up in speed to about 25, and at 25, it's now at its nameplate capacity, at its full output.
But at 300 feet, the wind is stronger than it is at ground level, correct?
That's correct. So when I said 5 miles an hour, I'm talking about on the ground. Actually, if it's 5 on the ground, it's maybe 7 or 8 at the hub. So and that's why the machine is so tall, because as the machine gets taller, you get more fuel. And so that's why windmills have evolved to become as tall as they have.
Anyone else, Mr.? Yes.
Thanks, Chairman. I attended this public hearing over at Herscher, and I thought it was an excellent deal. One of the things I don't think they touched on was a question was asked about a non-participating landowner if they can join, which is not true, right? Because you'd have to ask for a reciting.
Right. The site plan you've seen is the site plan we're allowed to build without going through the entire process all over again.
And the other thing is 150 plus people, there was not one objector. So if we don't have the vote pretty quick, I want to go on record as being in total support for this, because I have another commitment.
You ready for the vote?
Sure. Call for question.
Mr. State's Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because of some of the outstanding tax issues that we have and the manner in which the facilities or the hubs and whatnot are currently going to be amortized over the course of the tax, and we don't know what the future of the tax is at this point, I would recommend passing this on to the county board, but doing so without a recommendation as to passage or failure. Hoping that in the next week or so, my office can get some further information that we need with regard to what the actual income, if any, to the county is going to be. I know we've got some suggestions as to what it's going to be, but at this point, I would be more comfortable with having some time to get some additional information on how we're going to tax it after 2011 and where we see that going and how it's going to be amortized out, whether there's going to be an increase in value after 2011 or whether it's going to be considered completely reduced in value. So there are some issues there with taxation. I don't want to see this committee pass on a recommendation and have the county board feel obligated because we have such a strong support for it, and I support the project. I'm just concerned that 3-4 years down the line, we've got residents asking us, okay, where's the tax money now? And until we've got some answer to those sorts of questions to satisfy what we need in the future, pass it on to the county board because there's nothing left for this committee to do, but I would recommend passing it on without a recommendation for passage or a recommendation against passage.
Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I do, and again, I'm sorry we had an opportunity to speak about this. I would actually, quite honestly, say the opposite. This project, you have a more solid sense of the tax on this project than probably any other development project in the county because of the fact that the state has established what the taxes are on it through, you're right, through 2000.
I don't mean to interrupt, but that's my concern, is that the state is establishing the taxes, which means if we don't do our due diligence here in the next week or two, whatever the whim of Patrick Quinn or whoever the next governor is going to determine our tax base in 2.5 years, and I'm not comfortable with that as a representative of the county residents. I understand from your perspective, this is great, you've got a solid idea what the taxes are. From our perspective, we're looking at the possibility of buying a pig in a poke in 3 years. Because the government's going to say, you know what, this is too important. We can't tax these people anymore. We need to have these wind farms. We can't have a tax on this anymore. That's a real possibility given the environment, the political environment in the state of Illinois and in Washington. That's one of my concerns. That's something I want to look into to find out if there's a way to protect the county so that at the end of 2011, we're not getting zero instead of 60,856. So that's my concern. So that's why I'm asking, if you want to pass it on to the county board, I think that's the right thing. I don't think it's ready at this point for recommendation for approval.
Again, and obviously we can discuss it afterwards. You know, our personal feeling is, and obviously like you, I can't predict the future. I can't really imagine the state deciding that a major new source of revenue, which by the way, in their ordinance in passing it, they said one of the reasons they're doing it is because of the fact it's a source of revenue, that they would suddenly decide not to have that. But like you, I can't predict that future. Also, as Turner said, we also can't be subject to a taxing for one project in Illinois that would be different from what everyone else in the state is going to be charged for.
Sure you can.
Yeah.
Sure you can. It's the cost of doing business. You may not want it, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Let me just add that, you know, we can only comply with the law, and the law is, at this point, it's set by the state. So it seems though, you know, we have worked for 2 years to bring the project forward, done a whole lot of due diligence ourselves, and we're at a point now where, you know, where others, you know, it may be important for others to do due diligence in a timely fashion so that we can move this to a point where it can be recommended to the full county board.
Any other comments by members of the committee? Mr. Washington?
I believe we need to pass this with recommendation, conditional upon further information coming from the state's attorney's office. But I think we need to, it's important that we put the recommendation that it pass to the county board.
Are you putting a caveat on that
Yes.
motion?
Yes.
That would be an amendment to the motion?
Amendment.
Is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Mr. Marcotte. Do you understand what the amendment is? Would you care to reiterate your amendment?
That we pass this with recommendation for passage to the county board, conditionally upon the discovery of further information from the state's attorney's office.
Okay. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that amendment would do. You know, it's and I understand Jamie's concern, and I'm glad he's doing his due diligence on this issue. But I think that we would probably want this wind farm anyway. I mean, for its energy value and all the other values that come with it. I mean, I'd hate to lose $60,000 worth of tax income, but at the same time, you know, there's other benefits to the wind farm, jobs and whatever. So I don't know. It's kind of a rough issue.
Are you speaking against the amendment?
Well, I'm not sure. When we get more information, what do we do with it? I mean, is it if we get information that if what Jamie says is true, we then don't want it, or I mean, what's the more information going to do?
All that's left to the full county board to make the decision.
To decide. But all right.
So ready to vote on the amendment? Roll call on the amendment.
Mr. Stauffenberg?
Aye.
Ms. Barber? Mr. Hess? Mr. James?
Aye.
Ms. McBride? Mr. Marcotte? Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Scholl? Mr. Tholen? Mr. Tripp?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Witten?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye. All right, motion passed, and now we'll vote on the original motion,
Yes.
which is the recommendation with the amendment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Stauffenberg?
Aye.
Ms. Barber? Mr. Hess? Mr. James?
Aye.
Ms. McBride? Mr. Markcott? Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Scholl? Mr. Follen? Mr. Tripp? Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Witten? Mr. Alcock?
Aye. Motion carried. That's all the business we have on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? By the way, don't leave until you initial the motion. Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.